Portage la Prairie. Portage la Prairie. Portage la Prairie. Portage.
You are listening to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda. On this episode, we're discussing Portage la Prairie, side E of the double 7 and 5-inch compilation Play at Your Own Risk Volume 2 from Recess Records, release number 18. This compilation came out in 1995, and it was initially released in a box set with varying shades of purplish or gray vinyl for the 7 inches and black vinyl for the 5-inch. When the second press came out, it was in a tri-fold double 7-inch and 5-inch with all black vinyl. There were 1,000 copies of the box, and the box set edition came with pretty amazing insert art that looks like a mix between a zine and a DIY show flyer from like the late 80s. There are lyrics, there are liner notes, there are production details, there are comics. There's a ton of contact information, including addresses and phone numbers, telling people to reach out and get in contact with them. And there's either a box of matches or a napkin. And I have the box of matches, and I thought about seeing if one of them would still light today, but I wussed out and didn't do it.
Dude, my box has a napkin. So you have the matches and I have the napkin. So I got the story behind the napkins and the matches, which listeners will hear in our interview in a little bit. But this box set compilation is one of some releases that Propaganda participated in with Recess Records, while they were also on Fat Records. Notable releases fans will know are the I Spy Propaganda 10-inch split, I'd Rather Be Flag Burning, featuring Woe Is Me, which we discussed on episode 28. They also did Where Quality Is Job Number One, the double 7-inch featuring government cartoons that we talked about on episode 41. And the FYP Propaganda split featuring John K. Sampson's Letter of Resignation, which we discussed in episode 14. So it makes me really happy that we're doing a discussion of a fourth episode on a release for Recess Records. And, we're sort of like completing the releases that we've done for Recess. So now we've touched on all of these releases, which I'm really happy about.
Right.
I've come to also, Keith, recently come to fully embrace the fact that Recess Records is such an important part of the Propaganda story. By my count, it looks like Propaganda put out about 18 songs, plus or minus a couple, on Recess Records. So we're talking about, a full length and a half worth of material here. So I'm here to give full credit where credit is due to Recess Records and the history of Propaganda.
Yeah, awesome. Shout out to Recess Records. And Greg, I was thinking about, I guess, my own personal experiences with compilations today as I was flipping through the box set. And I realized how quickly media has evolved since I started to explore more independent music, probably around about 20 years ago. And I only recently started buying vinyl, but in my teens, compilations were the cheapest and the fastest way to discover bands. Aside from getting a mixtape from a friend, if I bought a compilation CD, I poured over those collections of music, just like I did, a regular album. The art, the liner notes, and a hefty chunk of music I discovered was from compilations. My older brother wasn't into the same music as I was. Some of my friends had similar interests, but I kind of started to go on a different path. So I started thinking back to the compilations I listened to the most.
Yeah.
So the first one is the Vans Punkorama the 2.1, where I discovered The Descendants and Pulley and Millencolin, Bad Religion, SNFU, and NoFX. Another one where I got a ton of albums from, it was called Fighting Music 2, the compilation between Bridge 9, Death Wish, Thorpe, and Indecision.
I forgot about Thorpe. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So Converge, Ringworm, The Promise, and The Suicide File.
Yes.
I had Century Media's Identity 7, where I first heard Chrysian, Candiria, Cryptopsy, I Hate God, and Psy.
Yeah.
Trustkill had a couple good ones, and Trustkill Strikes Again with Most Precious Blood, Throwdown, and Poison the Well.
Yeah, shout out to Justin Brandon from Most Precious Blood.
The Plea for Peace compilations were
Oh,
really good.
yeah.
I had volume 2 with Anti-Flag and Curl Up and Die, Victory Style number 5, Snapcase, Darkest
Buffalo.
Hour, and Thursday, and Relapse's Contaminated series, the 3.0. I heard Nile, Amorphous, Today is the Day, Burnt by the Sun, Neurosis, Suffocation. I mean,
I had that
so
comp
many
too.
bands. Yeah. And I'm kind of bummed that I don't have them anymore. If I kind of moved on and thought like I used it to discover music and then that was it. So, I would spend $10 on a comp just like I would a full length in hopes of just finding more bands, or even better, what I often did was, if I went to like a resale CD shop and found it used and got it even cheaper. So, I only got a copy of Play at Your Own Risk last year from my buddy Joe.
Mm-hmm.
So this particular set of music didn't come across my radar until recently, within the last year, but it makes me kind of reflect on, this might sound dramatic, but the democratizing effect of compilations and their
Mm-hmm.
access to music, especially for me, since I had to save my lunch money in high school to buy CDs, to buy albums. So my funds were limited. And although there are still some examples like this today, last year Shut It Down for the Movement for Black Lives comes to mind on Bandcamp. I do feel a little pang of nostalgia talking about compilations, since like the how we consume music has changed. But
Yeah.
it really made me appreciate the effort put into this, and the ability to bring all of these different artists together to expose people to new and interesting music. So, Greg, tell us about the guest for today who put out this compilation.
Yeah, man, this is a crazy cool episode. For me, I'm just so thrilled that I got to do the interview for this one. Our guest on this episode is Todd Congelliere, who is a former professional skateboarder and member of the bands FYP, Toys That Kill, the Underground Railroad to Candyland, and a solo project under his own name. Todd Congelliere founded Recess Records in order to start putting out his own music with FYP, which stands for 5-year plan. And it snowballed from there once people started finding his music and he was selling it at skate parks to people that he would just like drag like a bunch of like 7 inches like to the skate park and just start selling them to people. And that's when Recess took off. Today, Todd is in Toys That Kill and he runs Recess Records, and he also runs a live music venue in San Pedro, California called The Sardine, which regularly hosts gigs by Mike Watt, Black Dahlia from the Dwarves, and more, and Toys That Kill, obviously. So if any of you out there are floating around San Pedro, California, go to The Sardine and say hey to Todd. And on this episode, which is titled Portage la Prairie, we actually talk about every Propaganda release out on Recess in the order that they were released. So this compilation, Play at Your Own Risk, Volume 2, is release number 18. But we talk about them in the order, the numeric order that they appear on Recess. Like I went to a lot of trouble to like make sure that I had them in the right order and everything. So we went in chronological order of Propaganda's involvement with Recess. And in the episode, Todd talks about tons of great stuff, like the importance of the 10-inch split, which is like mythical in the minds of Propaganda fans. And we also talk about all the jokes that are embedded into the making of Where Quality is Job Number 1 double 7-inch.
Right.
We talk about his memories of the FYP Propaganda split with Letter of Resignation on it. We talk about the creation of the compilation box set. And we also talk about the I Spy 10-inch Revenge of the Little Shits, which Todd also put out on Recess, and which he still has copies of on the Recess web store to this day, of the original pressings that he made in the 90s. So this interview could truly go with any song from a Recess Records release, but I love that we got something special for this super bizarre little tune, Portage la Prairie.
Right.
Seeing as how the Propaganda releases on Recess have so many little blips and inside jokes as a part of them as well, I find it kind of fitting that Todd and I were both having a little bit of a laggy internet when we recorded. So there's little like bleeps and bloops throughout our conversation, but the whole thing is totally listenable. So it's almost like on the Where Quality is Job Number One 7-inch, where there's all these little like locked grooves and little built-in inside jokes. So it's 100% listenable episode. And listeners won't have any issues with that. But it's almost like the Propagandy Recess Lords of the Universe were smiling down on us to create a podcast episode that sounds like the ironically titled Where Quality is Job Number One. So it feels super on brand to have a blippy episode with Recess Records. I'm just so happy with this conversation. So without further delay, please enjoy my conversation with Todd Congelliere from Recess Records. I hope you love it. Todd Congelliere, welcome to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propagandy.
Thanks for having me.
I'm delighted to have you here, Todd. I'm really excited. For anybody out there who may not know who you are, I'm wondering if you can just give a brief introduction of yourself to your varied and storied and adventurous past of the many lives you seem to have lived within your lifetime.
Well, I like boxes of chocolates, and my mama's always right. And I do Recess Records, which is why the main reason why they asked me on here. And Recess released some propaganda stuff back in the day. Before that, I funded Recess Records with money from pro skateboarding, and I've been in bands, and I'm gonna keep it brief,
I love it, man. Well, I actually saw your band. We had a brief social media interaction the other day where I said I saw your band FYP play with Teen Idols and Diesel Boy, I believe, in St. Louis one time. So I've actually been in the same room with you at one point in my life, which is pretty awesome to be sitting here now with you all these years later.
Awesome. That's great.
I love it. Well, Todd, tell me a little bit about the founding of Recess Records. Why did it come to exist? I'm sure you've told this story elsewhere, so feel free to be as brief as you'd like. But listeners will be definitely curious to know about the history of your label a little bit.
Yeah, well, it started because I was doing FYP, and at the time, this was like around '88. I was just making 4-track demos. Like I said before, I had money from dating professionally, and I was still living with my parents. I was probably 16 or something. And I was kind of wasting money on video game. And I told myself, I'm like, I'm going to get a 4-track and make music. So I made some recordings, and they were all about getting revenge from teachers in high school that were fucking with me. So I would make a recording, the song would be about this teacher. I would go, when the teacher turns back, I would hide it on the desk. And that turned into like, well, now I'm just making tapes to sell skate contests, and people bought them, and they seemed to like them, or they thought were funny. And I listen back now, and they're definitely funny. So there was something redeeming about them, but people enjoyed them enough to buy them. So I was like, maybe I'll do a record one of these days. So I talked to some people, mainly he's a skate photographer, but he's also a musician. He's in the band All of Lawn. He told me where to press it. I talked to this guy Calvin Johnson, who does K Records, and distributed it, and it was off and running. And it wasn't like I'm going to start a record label. It was just that I just wanted to put out FYP on a 7-inch record and not have tapes anymore.
Nice.
And so that just kind of snowballed from there. I decided to do the second FYP 7-inch, and then the third release was another band. So that was when it was like apparent that I'm gonna try to keep doing this and just use the money that from the last 7-inch to do a new release, and that just kept going. It hasn't stopped since then.
I love it. So Todd, I know that you've been friends with the guys in Propagandy for a long, long time. Can you tell me about when you first discovered the music of Propagandy for the first time and how they came onto your radar as as a friend, as a fellow musician, as a record label person? Tell me about that first time you found them.
See, this part's kind of hazy because I don't know if how clean everything was out yet or not. But I think this is how it went, and I'm sure Hannah will be like, "You fucking idiot, you forgot this." But I'm pretty sure they heard I was doing shows, like setting up shows in Southern California, and I think they heard I did some Born Against shows, and all of us being fans of Born Against, they're like, well, let's contact this guy because he did Born Against out there. And
yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's how it happened. And I think the first show I set them up with was at the same place I did the last Born Against show, which was the Hong Kong Cafe, which is a place out in LA. It's like a Chinese restaurant that has had shows. I mean, they had shows, the Germs played there and Black Flag played there. So it was around for a long time. And then when I started doing shows there, I was just psyched because this was like, I've seen videos of the Germs and Black Flag playing here and Alice Bag. And it's just like, wow, I could do shows here. So they came out and played and just hit it off like immediately. FYP played with them, and we just started doing shows and setting up tours, and that's where the split 10-inch came about, because I wanted to put something out by them, and they said, well, we have a friends band, I Spy, and it was a great thing.
Nice. Well, did you have a sense, like when you first started seeing Propagandy, that they were kind of like a special band to you? Like, did they immediately suck you in as like wow, this is really fantastic, I'm really into this?
Oh yeah, like they were, they had that Fat and Epitaph sound. They had, obviously the first album, it does have that No Effects and that whole sound, but speaking of Born Against, they had that too.
Yeah.
Which was completely weird for back then. Like, it wasn't, these bands could not be political at all. To me, it was like refreshing, because I did like that music, but guys were witty and sarcastic, and had like a Dead Kennedys feel to it, which at the time, political punk was very stale and stuffy and boring, and it was just a lot of finger pointing, and you go to shows and you'd feel bad. And they had the same message, albeit much more intelligent and with a ton of humor. So that was missing, and that was what made them special to me, because they had this sound that wasn't hardcore.
Yeah.
Whatever you classify it, people, I hate classifying it. They say pop punk or skate rock or whatever it is. But
yeah,
that sound with political, with full on political humor. And
nice.
It was rare back then, for sure.
Man, that's awesome. And they totally we're talking about Born Against too. If you listen to that, where quantity is job number one comp, and the quality is job one comp. John K. Sampson is on the microphone on the record saying, "Oh, Born Against, I love Born Against." So that was clear. It was a clear influence on them back in the day, and I really love that you drew that parallel. Let's talk a little bit about that I'd Rather Be Flag Burning split. 1994, I believe, Recess Records, number 12. And I'm really taken with the way that you have done all of these different Propaganda releases. So I want to get a little nerdy with you, because there are so many interesting little details that you have woven into these records, which make them stand out so much and which make them very special to fans. So I'd Rather Be Flag Burning has like 8 or 9 different covers. And I'm wondering if you have any like stories about all the different color variations, or any special information you have on the various versions, like pressing totals or anything like that. What jumps out at you about these 8 or 9 different covers of this I'd Rather Be Flag Burning split?
Well, that was basically because every time I repressed it, I wanted. Well, the thing is too, I mean, the information on my website says there were 2,000 press. I never did any color vinyl, so I know they were all black vinyl.
Okay.
I could have sworn there was much more than that. So I way off on this one, but basically back then I would just order the vinyl and get covers printed. And I usually went with my friend who ran a Sir Speedy. It's like a chain print shop around here.
Mm-hmm.
And he would just, work after hours and get me a good deal. And the thing is about that is every time I wanted, whether I did a new pressing, I wanted it to look different just to like keep me from being bored with it. Because we were stuffing them all, mainly me, except for the time that Chris Hanna came down to visit and the dog shit incident. But that it was always just like when I'm starting to stuff records, I wanted to be excited again about the release. So I always wanted a different color cover. Like all the covers back then, if I repress something, I just changed the cover just to keep it interesting and fresh. And that was a selfish thing. It was kind of like I didn't know that people would be like, oh, well, I'm not going to buy this one because it's not the first press cover. And that's what it turned into. But it was like kind of like just for me, just to keep it fresh and exciting.
Do you think that each cover has about the same number in circulation out there, or are there any that are like significantly more rare than others? Like, what's the story? Do you know any details?
No, I don't know for sure. There's like covers that I don't even remember, and I know I've touched almost every one of them.
Yeah,
I see them online on Discogs, and I'm like, whoa, I don't remember that one. But what was happening is the printer that was doing those covers, he knew that I wanted to change it up, and so he ended up just buying, like he was getting different color paper and using different color inks because he knew like, yeah, he just wants everything different. So there's stuff out there that I would never be able to pinpoint all of them and tell you how many of each were made, were printed and or whatever. All I know about that release is everything was black vinyl. Yeah.
Nice. Do you know which versions you personally own? Do you have any in your personal collection?
Yeah, and I believe it's the turquoise blue ink one.
Nice.
I should have looked at my records aren't around me right now. I should have looked before this, but I used to have most of the color of the covers and then ended up having to sell some just because that's just the way it is.
That's the way it goes.
Sometimes you gotta raise some money to put out another record, and but I definitely kept one or two for sure, and that's like one that it is just like I don't want to. I know people are looking for it a lot. They're always looking for it, so I don't want to get rid of my last one. That's one of the releases I'll never do that.
Yeah,
I mean, I say that about every Recess release, but I've noticed lately that I don't have a lot of releases, and now I'm like, well, hopefully I could get it for a decent price.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering if you know about how special fans see that flag burning split. Like this is like a release of mystique. Like people absolutely love this split with I Spy. Do you know about this? Like, are you aware of like how special this release is to fans?
Maybe not as much as you're talking about, but I definitely since gotten enough people writing me asking about it to make me think that it is that, but I don't know if I know the tip of the iceberg of it. I know that Propaganda has rabid fans to this day, and it just keeps escalating, and which is insane because they're a completely different sounding band from back then, which to me is a major triumph, like,
yeah.
Just like, their latest LP, like I was kind of late at one and I listened to it not long ago, and I'm just like, this is like a completely different band, but it's amazing. And it could be one of their best albums.
It's amazing. Absolutely.
It's absolutely crazy.
You mentioned on Ryan Young's podcast, Angry and Anxious, that there is a possible dog poo story in relation to I'd Rather Be Flag Burning. And I wonder if you wanted to shed a little bit of light on that for the propaganda-centric listenership that we have here.
Well, it's more than possible because it happened, and Chris Hanna is my witness because he was visiting me at the time, and he actually used to come in when I still lived with my parents. He used to come down and visit for either. There was one time he came down to visit because he wanted to personally sit in on a mastering job for Less Talk More Rock, and which is a story in itself, made because Ice-T said "sup" to us during this session.
Sweet.
And I think the dog shit incident happened, and I think he just flew down just to hang out and play hockey at the mall, and because we were both really into hockey, and so he came down and he would just stay with me at my parents' house for a few days, and we would try to do some work, which was stuff records, like a new press come in, come on down, and which I think now is kind of crazy because you just flew from Canada just to hang out and stuff records and play air hockey. But one day we ended up just kicking ass. I mean, I'm thinking maybe 1,000 records, which is a lot. Like if you're stacking them inside of a garage, they start piling up. And so we do this, we stuff them, and they're just stacked in piles. We didn't put them back in boxes or anything. They were just stacked in piles in the garage. And my sister had this Shar-Pei dog, which I wasn't a big fan of, but I ended up having to take care of it a lot because she just leave. But I wasn't a big fan of super hyper. He'd always jump on you and just shit in the wrong spot. So we do this, we stack them, and there's all over the place. We go and play air hockey, and we come back, and I guess the dog got into the garage and brodied all over the records. Like, I mean, they had plastic slippery bags, so if you stepped on one pile, the whole thing flattened out to where there was 1,000 records on the floor of the garage. Like you could barely see the floor. So we had them stacked in neat piles, and the dog just peeled out on all of them. And there's just diarrhea, like major diarrhea, covering like a good amount of them. And this isn't the only shit story that I have with Hannah, but it was the funniest, where we just, I was horrified at first, and then we were just busting up. We couldn't stop laughing. And
oh my God.
Like it was a crazy gut buster.
So did you have to like restuff get just new plastic bags and just like restuff the records?
No, we just sold them. Those are the rare ones.
Oh, sweet.
No, I'm just kidding.
Fabulous.
We had to take them all out and throw the bags away. I had enough bags to do it, and some of them were just soiled and I had to throw them away. And but none of the records got damaged or anything. So
amazing. Would you ever repress that record? Do you think that's something that you would ever consider revisiting?
I mean, I would love to. I don't know if the band wants to, and I also kind of like what you said. There's a mystique to it, and I'm kind of a fan of that. Where
nice.
I would rather, instead of dealing with there's plenty out there for people to acquire. Yeah. I mean, I don't like. Doesn't make me happy that maybe the price is high, but that's just the way it goes. I mean, I've sold them for high prices, so, and I probably even have one on Discogs that's really high, but it's because I don't want to sell it. Right. But at the same time, that's just the way it is. That's the way this whole market is now, where it's, I'm just saying people can acquire one if they want, and I kind of appreciate the mystique more than the putting more out there.
Well, I'm thinking about getting another color variant for myself as well sometime, but I leave it for special occasions. I monitor the situation, and if I see something I can't pass up, then I go for it, which is which is how I found the one that I showed you a little while ago. I mean,
I'm a collector too. I'm a super uber geek collector, so I understand it all.
Oh yeah. Well, let's talk about where quality is job one. The double 7-inch recess number 14. I think there are 10 versions of this one with the two different colored 7 inches. Do you have any information on the different variants for this one, about like, how many, like what would you would order them like in numbers of batches, if there's any letters like super rare? What do you have on this one?
See, I think as opposed to the 10-inch, which I could have sworn the 10-inch, the minimum quantity you could order was 1,000. Just because doing a 10-inch was a little bit more special. I'm pretty sure I started off with 1,000 brown and yellow transparent ones.
I have that one.
Okay, so that I'm 98% sure that was the first press.
Okay,
it was 1,000 copies. The second press was another 1,000, but it was brown and yellow opaque. And the reason why we did that was because it was shit and piss. And
yeah,
that's always been a theme with us. And
yeah, it's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, and then the third pressing I did 500, which was one was black and one was gray.
Okay,
which
I have
gray
that one.
was okay. Gray is the what do you call it? The mixed.
Yeah, it's like a marble.
Yeah, and they did this back then, but I think it was like a special thing that they gave the pressing plant. I was very close with them, so they gave me kind of like a wink, like, we'll do this for the same price as black vinyl, but you have to just suffer through whatever we do. Now they do that. Now it's just like a thing where it's the same price as black vinyl, but they want you to do that because they want to get rid of all the extra,
the ink and stuff,
vinyl.
Right?
Yeah, but it usually turns out purple or gray, and that's what that was. I want to say that's it, but
okay.
I mean, yeah, I don't know anything else. Like I can't think of anything. That's all I have in my notes.
Nice.
But like I said, it's not completely 100% solid,
Yeah. What is the story behind putting together this double 7-inch? Like what details do you remember working with the band on this one?
Well, this was another visit from Chris, and where we actually went to the mastering place, where it wasn't really a mastering place, it was more like a lacquering place where we would watch him cut the record. And as we were driving over there, we thought on one of the sides we wanted just to do like shitty little etchings, and we thought it would be funny because people try to play it and there's nothing on it. But I remember that was the weirdest sit-in session to this lacquering guy, because the guy was kind of weird already. And we asked him, like, hey, can we do the etchings? And he just looked at us like we were crazy. And then by the time we were done with it, I think Hannah did most of the drawing.
Wow.
I might have doodled one of them, but by the time we were done with it, he just looked at us like, okay, this is you're paying for this. Go ahead. And like the whole, I remember the whole drive back, we were just cracking up, kind of like the dog shit story.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that's why, and I got a lot of heat from that, where people were like, one side doesn't even play. It just skips all over the place. And people would try to return them. And it was a clusterfuck, and it kind of backfired, but now that we're through the woods on it, it's funny. And I'm glad we did it.
Okay. Well, I got some questions on these etchings, right? So there's no center labels on these records, which is legendary now at this point with fans. And there's etchings, like mine have penises on them and all kinds of stuff. How do you do these etchings? Do you have to do this on every record, or you do it on one record and then it gets repressed as many times as that mold goes through the pressing?
Yeah, like they were the place that we went to that I was just talking about. You just do it once on the mold, which is called the mother, there, and that's like a lacquering job. And once that mother's made, that's it. Like that's the way every record's gonna look. And I mean, there was even the pressing plant that I pressed it at was saying they made me sign something saying they weren't responsible for manufacturing defect on that one, which we didn't care. The whole thing, we put lock grooves on it, which like, I don't know if yours does this, but there's like songs that don't go to the next song because there's a lock groove. And
yes,
we just made it very difficult to listen to the music. because I think Hannah was kind of, he kind of blew it off, but he wanted to see the release anyway. So we just made it very difficult to just put it on and go drink some coffee and sit back and relax. You had to like be right in front of your record player to play these songs. And
So how do locked grooves work? Because mine does have a locked groove at the end of leg hold trap. It doesn't play past that. You have to physically move the record arm. Tell me about locked grooves and how that works.
It's usually reserved for the end of, I mean, I think the most famous one was the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper, where at the end of the record, the song's over and it doesn't just run off. The needle doesn't just run off. And I mean, I don't know if you're aware, but I used to have a record player, and I don't think they make them anymore. But when it's done, when one side of the record's done, the tone arm lifts up and goes back and returns. So you can actually put a record on and leave, and you come back and your record player will not be spinning.
Right.
The tone arm will be back. And so so what a lock groove does is just keep it's almost like a skip where it keeps repeating the one part, and you specifically tell your lacquering guy, I want to lock groove right here, I want it to skip. And on the Beatles record, they even replicated it for digital CD and everything. You can kind of hear it where it's just like,
Wow.
Like on the record. And this was in the 60s, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
On the record, it's just doing that over and over again, and it could literally make you go insane if if you fall asleep and you hear it, you have a nightmare. And so we did that. We already did that with a few records, and this was the one where I forgot which one we did. I think we did one of the FYP albums, but it's just on the end of a song, and that's the only time you ever did it. And we were like, let's do it in the middle of the record. And
amazing.
Lo and behold, we did it. We wanted, not like, we just wanted to fuck with people's attention spans or something. I don't know really, but there was some artistic merit to it.
Tell me about some of the complaints you got, because I knew this. I was like, there's no way they didn't hear about this from like 1,000 people. Tell me about some complaints.
Oh, people just wanted to return them. They said it's messed up, and I would. I mean, I don't know if email was around back then, so everything had to be done through snail mail, and I like them back saying, you can return it if you want, but these were manufactured this way. It's on purpose. And then they write back, that's cool,
Nice.
Or people would just be like, fuck you assholes, But I do remember the pressing plant may sign something just based on, because they just saw it as it's already defected. You guys fucked it up. It was kind of like that Home Alone, look what you did, you little jerk kind of scene. And and it's like, well, it's not the end of the world. Like, just press it up, I'll pay you and sell them, and we'll see what happens.
God, I love it. Okay. Well, let's go on to the Play at Your Own Risk Volume 2 double 7-inch plus 5-inch compilation, which is Recess number 18. I have a couple of these. I have the box set, and I also have a trifold. And I actually had 2 trifolds, and I gave one as a present to Todd Kowalski because he didn't have one. So Todd now has one as well, which I'm really excited about. What's the story of this compilation box set, and maybe a little bit about the Play at Your Own Risk series?
Well, it was a short-lived series. I wanted to do them over and over again, but we only did 2 of them. The first one was just a 7-inch, and then the second one was this. And I believe we did 2,000 copies, 1,000 with the box and 1,000 with the trifold.
Okay.
I do kind of remember that I ordered a shit ton of trifold jackets because the box set sold so fast that I thought, now I'm going to sell 5,000 of these trifold. So I remember, and they were those things were expensive to make because they were very, very rare.
Yeah.
And it just kind of slowed down really quickly after I did the second dozen. So that's all there was, and I think I ended up getting a few thousand covers. The box set has a different. I want to say the first one was a yellow with black ink.
That's what I have.
Or dark ink or something. And then the second one was maybe a white sticker with blue ink.
Yeah.
And at least half of those boxes came with like a matchbook, like a recess matchbook, and I want to say some sort of napkins.
So I have the napkin.
What was the napkin? Was it like a Halloween napkin?
So I'll turn my camera on really quick and I'll show you. I know we have I know we have the cameras off, but I'll show you my napkin.
They're Halloween.
Yep, there's my napkin.
My memory is better than I thought.
I will put a picture of the napkin on the Instagram for the podcast and on the Twitter, so everybody can see the napkin that I'm actually talking about.
So that was the reason why those napkins were in there, was that we have this box set. We could fit more stuff, and it might even pack it better so the records aren't flying around.
Yeah.
And I just remember my parents having a surplus of Halloween napkins.
Amazing.
And I was like tempted to like stamp them with the Recess logo just to completely fuck with people's emotions, but that thing was really hard and expensive to put together, so I just left it at the pumpkin napkin.
Isn't that amazing that I still have that? This box set that I have has the napkin in it. I mean, this thing, it's 25 years ago. And here's the napkin. It's sitting right here in my house.
I'm going to tell you, I doubt I have the napkin version, which I think if we talk it up enough, we can really up resale value to these.
Dude, if you have a version of this box set with the matches or the napkin, that's amazing. So cool. Well, Todd, if you ever need the napkin for like a Recess, like archival project, I will mail you this napkin in an insured envelope.
I would never take your napkin.
Okay, thank you so much. If you ever need it though, like high res scans or anything, I'm down. Okay, I'll hook you up. I promise.
All right.
So I got to know about the Portage la Prairie from Propaganda and When We Grow Up from I Spy. So this is like the easily the weirdest Propaganda song in the world.
Yeah.
That is in existence. Tell me about your thoughts on the Portage la Prairie dance beat song, which doesn't even seem to be performed by an actual member of Propaganda. It says curated by Chris and performed by Paul Sutton and John Gillette. So tell me the story behind Portage la Prairie, the dance beat song.
The thing is, the one thing I do know about it is that they committed to being on this compilation, and by the time it was like I had most of the songs, I just didn't have theirs. And so I just kept bugging them, hey, where's your song? Where's your song? And then they turned that in, and it was almost like I at first I felt like, are you fucking with me? and then I was like, you know what? We've been fucking with people left and right since we've been doing Propaganda releases. So if I'm the butt of the joke this time, I will accept it. And I ended up really liking it, where I was like, fuck it, this is it. And if you notice, they did the same thing where it's an etching instead of a label.
Yeah.
Same kind of deal. So it was almost like an extension from where Quality is Job One.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like with me. So it's it's great.
Do you like the song?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I love it. Do you know who Paul Sutton and John Gillette are by any chance?
I don't really, my memories doesn't serve me. I know Chris told me about who it was at one point, but it's been so long ago. I feel like it was just their friends and they were fucking around and they came up with that. So
freaking hilarious. Why did you do a 5-inch of the I Spy side and the Propaganda side instead of a 777-inch?
Just to make it cool, like just to make it like a fun thing. And also it was a big thing, was a tribute to the 10-inch, because it was like, okay, it's half the size. That was 10, this is 5.
Oh,
and it's
cool.
I Spy, it's Propaganda, and that up to date, at the 10-inch release was one of the best. That and FYP's Dance My Dance were the best sellers of Recess up until then. So it was kind of like a tribute to that, where it was like, let's just do it. Let's do it like that. I mean, I don't even think it was my decision to do it like that. And I just went with it, and I think they liked it. So.
I love it. Well, Todd has one now, so I made sure that Todd has it, and he was extremely excited to see it again. He hadn't seen one for a long time, so I think this is kind of one of those little special moments in history where it's like, holy shit, we have a 5-inch record. This is so cool. It's awesome. Like, and I know that you did the test pressings as a 7-inch for this one. How many of those test pressings exist? Because you probably have one. And I've seen them on Discogs a little bit here and there. Tell me about the test press as a 7-inch, which then turned into the 5-inch.
I want to say there was 5 of those.
5.
And yeah, I mean, the test pressings back then were not like now. People order 50 test pressings because they end up selling them. And
yeah,
back then, the most we ever got was 7.
Okay.
So there's like all these releases, all the 90s recess releases, the test pressings were never past 7.
Wow.
Because it was just weird. There was no market for them. Like, it wasn't like people like are rabid over them like they are now.
Right.
It was just, the purpose was to have multiple copies in case there's a skip. So if there's a skip, you check the next test pressing and you check it at the same spot. If it's skipping at the same spot, then there's a defect.
I understand.
It's not, and it's just that's certain pressing, like a fly shit on it or something. You know, it wasn't like a defect in the lacquers.
Yeah. What kind of test pressings do you have laying around over at Recess? Do you have like a stockpile of these things? Like, are they special to you, or is it kind of like it doesn't really matter because it's just part of the business?
I have a huge pile of them, but it dwindled in the last few years because I started selling them. I started doing a special on the Recess site where you could buy a bundle, and one of them's like, you know, cheaper, that is mystery test. You're getting whatever I choose, and then some tiers of it is you're getting, you choose one and you get a mystery. So some sort of post on some Facebook group or something or other that alerted them I was doing this. And this was, keep in mind, this was like a year or two after I originally started it.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, people were just going apeshit and buying them left and right. So it has dwindled down, but I still have a good, healthy amount of them.
Nice. Very cool.
I mean, keep in mind, I'm still doing releases, so it shrinks, it grows back, and you know.
Awesome. I love it. Okay. Well, let's talk about recess number 19, Propaganda FYP, which, you know, I'd imagine is fairly special to you, seeing as how you are in FYP. It must feel pretty cool having a, you know, shared release with you in Propaganda. It's got to feel pretty special. What's the story behind recess number 19?
Well, it was mainly because we were planning on, we used to do like little short trips together, but we actually planned a full-on European tour. And if I remember correctly, I think it was to have for that, to sell that tour. And the tour ended up being aborted because George mono, but we you know, the records were already done, and we did that. And I do remember doing 1,000 picture disc versions. And I know there was a red vinyl regular version, and then a black vinyl version. I want to say there was a blue one, but let me look real quick.
Yeah, I've got the black and I've got the picture disc, but I don't have the red one, which I've seen, you know, out floating around out there too. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see any information. Oh wait, here's one. Yeah, just red. Yeah, there was no. I don't think there was a blue one.
Well, the FYP side of the picture disc is blue on the picture disc, which is pretty cool because it's different on both sides.
Yeah. Back then, there was never. It was very rarely, and if ever, with Recess at least, there was never multiple colored vinyls. It was always either, you know, you get one limited non-black vinyl, and then the rest of them were black.
Yeah.
And so now it's different. Now it's just like you keep doing color pressings because people try to collect all of them, and I understand that.
So, a lot of Propagandy's work with Recess has, some shock value to it. The Portage la Prairie 5-inch, the locked grooves and the jokes that are built into quality. How did you feel whenever you got a John K. Samson bedroom demo as a standalone track for a split 7-inch?
I really love that song.
Yeah.
And I know it became a Weaker Than song, but like that, I really love it. And I remember Chris giving it to me and being really proud of it. And I don't think he had anything to do with it.
Amazing.
So, and I remember thinking that was weird, but good weird. Like it was like, oh, he's proud of his friend, and it was like really close to the time when he quit the band.
Yeah.
And started doing his own thing. So I'm sure it wasn't, they were on terms, but it wasn't like, it was just kind of, I thought it was endearing just because he turned that in, and that was, and it could have just been like, we don't want to go recording for this bullshit. Like, here, take this, it could have been that, but the way Hannah described it, I thought it was endearing, and I ended up loving the song. So it's, it's really good. I like both versions, but that one is closer to my heart because, for obvious reasons, it's the first one I heard, and we were kind of part of it. So
yeah. Well, there's actually a few conversations I've had this past year with people who are, fervent Propagandy fans who say that is their favorite Propagandy song of like the entire John K. Samson era. They're like, this is like on another level for me. Like, people love that song, and
yeah,
it's really interesting. So do you like this one more than the Weaker Thans version?
Yes. The Weaker Than version is obviously it's there's more quality, and it's it should be better, but that one just is like, closer to my heart because of it's, usually the first time you hear a song that you love,
yeah,
whatever version. That's why I like back in the day, used to get hardcore bands demos, and like I remember getting a Gorilla Biscuits demo before their album came out, and it just blew me away because the songs were the same songs off the album, but then when I got the album, it was too polished for me, and I think it has to do with your initial reaction to the songs as your your first exposure to them. And that was the same case with that song. That was my first exposure to it, and I love the song. So I do like that one better, but I know the Weaker Thans version it's definitely higher quality, and but I've never equated quality with great music or art. It's just whatever gives me goosebumps. I don't care if it sounds like you recorded it in a garbage can, and it's the intent, that usually gets me.
Yeah. Well, I love it. Well, I want to know about a Propagandy adjacent release that you've done as well. The I Spy 10-inch Revenge of the Little Shits. And you actually have copies of this record still at Recess, which completely blows my mind. I try to send people your way as often as I can to pick up a copy of that to help you sell it out. Tell me about this release and the process of it, what you remember about it, and then maybe tell us how many you have left over there. I'm very curious.
Well, I'm ashamed to say this, but I actually we had a Recess is now being operated at our music venue, the Sardine. And when we were building the Sardine, we had a big dumpster back there because we had to keep throwing wood away, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I ended up throwing some boxes away of that because there was so many. But it was my fault. I ordered way too many. I feel like I ordered 5,000 of them, and I think I used to do that back then because There was stuff that I was like, well, like the split, it just, you couldn't, you'd repress it and you just couldn't keep it in stock. So I was like, speculation with this kind of stuff, I'm terrible at. I mean, there's like a couple releases from that era where I just like overbit and I couldn't swallow it all. So it was the only thing I was throwing in the dumpster, that's for sure. But I still have probably, I mean, close to 700.
700?
Actually, I might be exaggerating. I think it's dwindled down to, I don't know,
650?
a few hundred at least.
Oh my God.
Like, and I'm gonna say at least 200. I didn't, I could go back and confirm with you, and we could do an update. But there was 700 by the time I was throwing them in the dumpster, because we just need to make room. And it's like, it's not embarrassing, only because I ordered way too many. So and it's a great release. It's one of my favorite releases. I love Todd. He's one of my favorite people I've ever worked with or met and became friends with through music. And that record pretty much came about just from spillage over from the split. We just kept in touch. We all kept in touch. We all like played shows. It was just a no-brainer pretty much. Like things like that were just like, of course I'll do it. Yeah, get it all ready. Let's do it.
I absolutely love it. I really, really sincerely hope that like 50 people who hear this will order that 10-inch. Like, come on, people. Go on recessrecords.com, order I Spy's 10-inch, make it happen, please.
It's definitely like, if you're a later Propaganda fan, it's definitely something you need, because it shows the development from the how to clean everything and less talk, into the more like metal tinge stuff. It's like kind of more abrasive hardcore, and Todd definitely had influence, so it's something you need.
Something that I'm curious about off the top of my head really quick is that this stuff, your Recess Propaganda stuff, is not on like Spotify or Apple Music. Can you tell us a little bit about that decision?
Yeah, there's well, I mean, basically I rarely do contracts with bands, and it was one of those things where right when the last split 10-inch went out, the band Propaganda re-released it on CD. And back then CD was the main seller back then. So it was just one of those things where they just kind of took, without being dicks, obviously,
sure.
Like they just took the release, and like I was pretty much done with it by then. So it was, and that makes total sense. It always makes sense that a band should have their music when all is said and done. So they would be the ones responsible for putting it up on Spotify. By the time Spotify and Apple Music came around, I just had nothing to do with it anymore.
Gotcha.
It was just the history and the legacy of it, which I'm very proud of.
Amazing. Well, do you have a favorite? So I have a two-part question. Your favorite Propaganda release that you have personally worked on, and your favorite Propaganda release that you did not work on.
The Split is my favorite one that they worked on by far.
Okay.
And the Less Talk More Rock is my favorite one that I didn't work on.
Fantastic. And what's so cool is that Chris and you were like hanging out as like buddies while they were making Less Talk, right?
Yeah, I actually went to he was staying at my house when we went to master it and drive up to San Francisco for him to talk to Fat Mike to renegotiate the deal for it.
Amazing.
And I actually even sat in on that, which was I was kind of flying on the wall with that. And I remember during it, Fat Mike was asking about the quality of the recording because he didn't want it to sound like the 10-inch. And at the time I was like, wait a minute, this is the most quality recording I've released so far. What are you talking about? Like, and I was just, I mean, I listen now and go, okay, I see what he was talking about. But at the time I was like, this, like, if anything, that was overproduced Recess. Like don't be saying that. He even threw in how bad Operation Ivy record sounded, and then he backtracked instantly and he said, oh wait, that record's great.
Oh my God.
So he wanted a very, like, more high quality product than what was on the 10-inch. And the 10-inch was precursor to Let's Talk More Rock because it had nation states, and it was just one of those things where he made it clear he wanted it to sound a little bit more produced.
Do you have any memories of Fat Mike talking about any of the songs on the 10-inch? Because I'm actually really surprised that Oka Everywhere didn't go on Let's Talk More Rock. And I'm also curious, like, if Fat Mike was like, nation states has to be on it. If he had any thoughts on that you're...
He didn't. I don't remember him saying anything specifically about any specific songs, but I'm surprised Oka didn't make it on anything else besides that, because that's probably one of my favorite songs, like of all time. But yeah, nothing else besides that. Was the only thing I remember is him talking about the piss poor recording quality, and we were kind of just all just like snickering, and but when it was time to see, this might have been a different trip that Chris took and stayed over, because when he actually took it into master, I mean, it could have been like he didn't master, or he was talking first and then we drove back down and we went to mastering place. But I do remember going to mastering place to sit in on the mastering job for Lockmore Rock, and they put us in this waiting room, which was when we went to the master place to do quality, when we did all the etchings. It's like this dark room with this weird guy with shorts that are too short and like maybe even his balls sticking out, like just really like sweaty and just shit, like Cheeto wrappers everywhere. And the place that Chris got I guess Fat Mike to pay for to do the mastering for Let's Talk More Rock was this super pro, like just high end place where they stuck us in this waiting room, and we look, there's just candy bars stacked up and Cokes in the refrigerator, and we were like kids in a candy store, like just jumping around going, we're gonna get all this candy. And next thing you know, we see this huge entourage, like 10 dudes walking by and kind of just mean mugging us, just like, what are these little kids excited about all that candy and soda, just like kind of giving us shit. And then the last person of this entourage was Ice-T.
Yeah.
And everyone else was just kind of giving us dirt looks, and Ice-T looks in and he goes, so
yeah.
And then now Let's Talk More Rock.
Nice.
And it sounds great. Thanks, Ice-T.
Oh yeah. Were you there like for the first attempt at recording Let's Talk More Rock? Were you around for that at all? Because Chris has talked about on his Patreon podcast about like going down to California, failing to record the entire record on the first try, and then going back to Winnipeg to like write more songs. Were you around for that?
I mean, I was around, but I wasn't in. I don't remember being in a studio or whatever. I do remember him, like complaining and really not happy with anything. And I mean, I've always just been and you could tell like bands that I'm in the recording, I've always been like, we booked some recording time, whatever comes out of this is what we got. Going back. So better do it right. And most of the time it didn't right, but that's what you're stuck with. And with him, I just remember going, damn, so you just keep going back and he's really, this is a good thing. This is a great quality of somebody that he was so passionate about that record. It almost seemed like he was about to give up because he wasn't getting what he was thinking. And I wish I had more of that in me. I have in me now a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're doing something that can be around forever, and they're proving that because they're a bigger band now than they were. So that record's around forever. Yeah. imagine them releasing the that he was super disappointed in. You know, it's just like, it's one of those things where what happened, it came out like that, and that's I like that.
Todd, what does propaganda mean to you as a fan of music?
Well, they're definitely pivotal in, you know, they came around when I was, you know, obviously younger, and they definitely steered me. It was a very pivotal moment, like meeting them, and you know, like, especially like, it was almost like I felt like I might have been stuck with stuff that didn't fully appeal to me, and I think they steered me into a, you know, another road where I, you know, I'm still around today, and I seek out good punk rock music all the time. So they definitely had something to do with steering me down that road. So
I love it. Well, Todd, this has been such a pleasure to chat with you about all these projects that you've done with this fantastic band that I love so deeply, and that I can tell you love just as deeply. I just can't even imagine what a thrill it would be to have all these projects that you can look at and say, like, yes, we did this together. This is amazing. Like, it's just so fantastic. And it's truly just an honor to talk to you about it and to hear your stories and talk about all these amazing releases. I'm just so grateful to you for spending this hour with me to go down memory lane with Propaganda a little bit.
yeah, I mean, they're the type of band it's some of my favorite memories, running a label and being involved in music, for sure. Like, especially like my friendship with Chris Hanna, he titled himself Flag North and I'm Flag South. So that's a whole nother story. So
Portage. In the morning, I eat portage. Porridge. In the morning.
So that was my chat with Todd Congelliere from Recess Records. If you want to know more about Todd's label, I highly recommend as well the 2-part interview that Todd did with Ryan Young from Off With Their Heads over at the Angry and Anxious podcast. Ryan Young is a huge fan of Todd's, and the interview is interesting front to back across both episodes that Ryan and Todd did, and they actually recorded it in Recess's office, like long before the pandemic. So it's two guys sitting there in a room together talking on microphones, like not overlapping each other on Zoom and things like that. But if you really want to, if you want to learn more about the history of Recess, definitely go listen to Todd and Ryan Young talk for like 4 hours about the history of Recess, because it's such a good conversation. I've been listening to it in fits and starts over the last couple of weeks on my runs and stuff. So interesting. And they do talk about Propaganda as well in that conversation. So if you want to, dive more into the history and legacy of Recess, go check out Angry and Anxious podcast episodes 22 and 23. And Todd's bandmate, Sean Cole from FYP and Toys That Kill, is also on the Angry and Anxious podcast on episode 25. So if you are an FYP and Toys That Kill geek, definitely go check out episodes 22, 23, and 25 of Angry and Anxious. Really great stuff. So thanks again, Todd. You're awesome. We're so glad you were here.
Greg, I mentioned a little bit already about how involved and specific and creative the liner notes and inserts is for this compilation. What did you find that it could be helpful to the listeners if they don't have a copy of this?
Well, first of all, it's actually pretty affordable to track these down. So if anybody wanted one of these, like, all you have to do is like look at Discogs like once a week or so, and you can usually find one. I have a copy of the Trifold, which is the second pressing, and I also have a copy of the box. So I've got both of these, and you can track one down usually pretty cheap. And so I'm going to try and post links to reasonably priced rare Propaganda vinyl on our Twitter page every now and then. Like if I come across a good deal on Discogs,
cool.
I've been posting those.
Yeah. And
several people have actually bought the things that I've posted. Like I'll post it and I'll say good deal on XYZ. And then I'll go back to that link like 10 minutes later and says, this item is unavailable. So I'm really stoked that people are actually finding stuff they want based on some deals that I'm finding on Discogs here and there. But this thing is absolutely hilarious. I mean, this is like zines, man. It's cutting out
Right.
drawings and pasting them onto sheets of paper and putting words around it. And like,
Mhm.
this is the stuff that you did in like 1997, or you know what I mean? This is the stuff that me and my first bands would do, where we would draw stuff and cut it out and paste it all over the place and then go to Kinko's and get the flyers made and everything. And it's just such a neat project to see the way they put this stuff together. So I absolutely love it. I love the artwork, and I can see the I Spy drawing right here. And there's a picture of Todd Kowalski, a little cartoon drawing of Todd barfing, which is really awesome. And then on the back cover with the track listing, it says side E, Propagandy, play, ? Portage la Prairie. So there's just all these little subtle jokes that are just built in, and it's all handwritten. Like all the liner notes are all like people's handwriting. So, you get a sense of the personal nature of this, because you're seriously seeing people from like 13 different bands, a member of those bands handwriting on every panel of this vinyl. And it's just so cool, man. It's so cool to see like personal touches on this kind of stuff years and years after it came into the world. I love holding it. I love looking at it. It's fantastic.
It really seems like maybe one of the most DIY things that I own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And, I get the impression that that's just kind of how Recess rolled, man. Like,
Right.
I don't really know how it is now, but like, I get the same kind of vibe when I hold my copies of Where Quality is Job Number One, the double 7-inch that Todd and I talked about. I just love the Propagandy years of projects that they did on Recess. I mean, it's just so endearing to me to hold these projects. And I know you feel the same. So should we dive into the music for Portage la Prairie?
Yeah, I have a feeling that we're gonna have some different comments for the music on this one, and based off of everything else that we've talked about recently, especially following up Purina Hall of Fame.
Yeah, well, and I tell you what, I'm relieved that we have this
sure.
this chill one the week after Purina. I think that this is an absolutely fantastic change of pace compared to last week.
No, right. And Greg, I think my observation that I kind of thought right away, listening through a few times this week, is that if you told me this was like a hidden track on a Dead Milkmen album, I probably would have believed you. It has a zany feel of like They Might Be Giants or something, like sampled audio, something that feels like Casio keyboard loops, the nonstop marching band whistle, the really absurd drumming. Right. It's so over the top and absurd. So this is not a serious song. So I don't really have very many comments that are going to talk about the music seriously, but listening to these samples mixed together, serious or not, I guess I'm reflecting on how much easier it is for people to make music now. Like if this is a soundboard or a keyboard, or today with GarageBand. And I'm really like a firm believer that digital music is music in every single way that performed music on instruments is, even if I don't really listen to very much like electronic, digitally created music. This my biggest takeaway musically is that this kind of makes me want to mess around with some apps to see what I could just come up with, and also to encourage my students in my class to just create, using what they have access to, like these digital tools.
Yeah, seriously. Like, say I was going to have a project where one of the prompt selections for students was to create a song, and they had no idea like how to begin. I might actually play this for somebody and say, hey, you can make a song about your town here's one that these people made about this town in Canada in the 90s. You know what I mean? I was thinking about some of this music as well, and I was digging into the liner notes on the box set, and I noticed in the propaganda section it says curated by Chris. And it says that Propagandy are Paul Sutton and John Gillette. And so it clearly says curated by Chris, but it says that Propagandy are Paul Sutton and John Gillette. So, Chris, Jord, John and John aren't even listed in this release at all. And I asked Chris who these fellows are, and Paul Sutton is actually John P. Sutton from the Weaker Thans. And John Gillette is actually someone named Paul Gillette, who was a local musician and bass player from the early 90s in bands that Propaganda used to play with. So John and Paul swapped first names in the liner notes. And when I saw Sutton in the liner notes, I knew it rang a bell. But Paul Sutton isn't necessarily the same person as John Paul Sutton or John P. Sutton, as he's listed in so many other of his other releases liner notes. And then I found, this is an interesting story. I went on Instagram and I searched John Sutton, and a John Sutton with mutual Instagram friends to me on the Propaganda Pod Instagram popped up, who lives in Winnipeg and has mutual friends that are like in the Propaganda orbit. And I was like, boom, John Sutton, there he is.
Right.
So I sent him, I slid into the DMs of John, of this John Sutton, and I wrote to him because he has, the mutual friends, and he wrote back instantly. And he said, unfortunately and tragically, I am not the same John Sutton. And I was like, dude, you must get that a lot in Winnipeg as a Winnipeg John Sutton. And we had a great laugh. So I couldn't track down John Sutton without a major campaign to do so. And it just didn't pan out on this one to talk to John Sutton. So John Sutton, if you hear this, hello. But interestingly, so John Sutton is currently playing for the Canadian band Rusty, who is a legendary band from the 90s in Canada. And he appears on Rusty's 2018 LP, Dogs of Canada. And Dogs of Canada, man, that record rocks. And in addition to his current project of Rusty, Sutton played bass on the Weaker Thans albums Fallow, Left and Leaving, and Reconstruction Site. He also produced and mixed I Spy's 10-inch on Recess. He mixed the I'd Rather Be Flag Burning split. He engineered and produced the Undecided's self-titled record. And if anybody listen to our Negretto episode, remember that J.P. Peters played guitar in the Undecided. And John Sutton also produced and mixed a Malfaction record called Man Grows Old. And he was also in the Winnipeg emo band Elliot, not the same Elliot that made False Cathedrals and U.S. songs on Revelation Records. There's a Winnipeg Elliot as well. And so John P. Sutton apparently made this song for the Play at Your Own Risk Volume 2 box set.
That's a prolific career.
Absolutely. The man is a legend. So I know John Sutton's not on this episode, but seeing as how he's involved with the flag burning split, I'm going to try and track him down. Maybe he'll be a guest someday on another flag burning episode. But I felt our hour with Todd Congelliere was sufficient for this episode, but I'm going to see if I can get John Sutton on someday. But for my comments on the music, this is such a wild tune because it's got these like death metal drum machine wild double kick. And it has what sounds like maracas, I hear, and whistles, and the hand clap solo in the middle. And in the liner notes, it says hand clap solo by Sutton. And it's got maybe a little bit of cowbell. And, I kind of want folks who listen to this podcast to send me random songs that they make with sound effects and drum machines. And I just want to like sing over the top of it. St. Louis, Missouri, come to St. Louis. And, I'm not saying it will be good because we're talking about a song that is like, it's super goofy, but, not everyone can do this. I think that John Sutton made something really kind of interesting here with the technology that was available in like 94, 95. And, there are signs of musical insight and prowess on this that John Sutton really demonstrates, and John Gillette as well. about the way songs work. But yeah, I wonder if someone sent me a bunch of random beats and sounds if I could make lyrics and singing over the top of it. So come at me, people. Show me what you got. Maybe we'll make a propaganda pod, dance song as well. But this song makes me want to bust out a keyboard, run GarageBand, and see what I
Right.
can do as well.
Yeah. That was the same takeaway. It makes me want to explore a little bit and just for fun, not to put out there for anyone, just to explore a little bit.
Yeah. Should we talk about the lyrics?
Yeah. Go ahead and start us off, Greg.
All right.
What stands out?
So before we get into the lyrics of the song, I kind of want to do an overview of the basics of Portage la Prairie.
Cool.
I've never been there, so this is purely for fun.
Yeah.
But the word portage or portage means the carrying of a boat or its cargo between two navigable waters. It's like if you're on a canoe trip and you need to take your canoe out of a river and transfer it to a lake. So you carry it across, right? That's what portaging means. And I actually knew this already because when I lived in Saskatoon, I was involved a little bit in the rowing club there on the South Saskatchewan River, and went to some beautiful lakes like Miss Nippy and like Tobin Lake up there in Saskatchewan. And I had to portage a couple times. So Portage la Prairie means carry a boat across the prairies. And the portage from the city's name is referring to a route used by indigenous people before the global fur trade. And it was 25 kilometers between the Assiniboine River and Lake Manitoba. So if you Google Maps and you find Portage la Prairie and you go straight north from there, there is a massive lake called Lake Manitoba. It's absolutely humongous. So that's the portaging that the name Portage la Prairie comes from. It's carrying a canoe from the Assiniboine to Lake Manitoba and back. The current population of Portage, about 13,000, 75 kilometers west of Winnipeg. It's the administrative headquarters of the Dakota Tippy First Nations Reserve. The Long Plain First Nation Reserve is also very close to Portage. The Assiniboine River runs right next to the town, and it's the same river that you can see if you also go to Winnipeg. Portage is a chilly place, as one might expect from Manitoba. The mean temperature in a year is 3 degrees Celsius, so it's barely above freezing.
Wow.
But things to do in Portage include seeing the world's largest Coke can, which is interestingly not mentioned in the song. I wonder if it's new since the song was released. And there's also a place called Fort Lorraine or Fort Lorraine. I'm not exactly sure how to say it, but it's like a heritage village, it looks like. And people on TripAdvisor called Fort Lorraine an unexpected gem. So there's a little bit of something to see if you go. Portage had a military air base south of the community known as Canadian Forces Base Portage la Prairie, which is now 3 Canadian Forces Flying Training School. So Air Force, Chris Hanna,
Right.
you're getting the connection. It was established as part of the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan during the Second World War and trained thousands of pilots for military services all over the world. So Portage la Prairie has a lot of military history. Notable people from Portage la Prairie include the 9th Prime Minister of Canada, a good number of former NHL players. The current premier of Manitoba Province, Brian Pallister, is from Portage la Prairie, and propaganda. So there's my trivia for travel. I will go to Portage la Prairie one day, obviously on a quest to experience the youth homeland of my favorite band. But we have the opening lyric here, Keith. You ready for these? So we have Portage la Prairie, Portage la Prairie, Portage la Prairie, Portage la Prairie, Portage la Prairie. Great place to visit, Portage la Prairie. So mine would be St. Louis, Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri, Fenton, St. Louis, Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri. Great place to visit, St. Louis, Missouri. So, that's what just comes to mind whenever this first line comes up. What do you think?
Yeah, same. I reflected on the places that I've lived, and Greg, most of my life has been here in Northwest Indiana. Aside from going away to school and my Peace Corps service, this is where I've lived, in a part where, people from Indiana and Chicago refer to this little pocket of the state as the region. It's the part of Indiana where lots of people work in the mills along Lake Michigan. They commute into Chicago. Politically, it is very different from the rest of the state. It's kind of like a megalopolis of suburbs. There are all these small towns and small cities that are jammed together in a way that you can't really tell where one ends and the next begins. Where I live in Highland is only like marginally bigger than Portage la Prairie. Highland is only 23,000 people, but you can't tell where it ends. And Hammond, just to the north, begins, which has like 100,000 people.
Yeah.
So I hadn't even heard the term the region before until I moved to Bloomington to go to school, just about 3 hours south, where I also found out that people from this area are called region rats.
Ooh.
Which can be kind of a badge of honor or a pejorative term, depending on how it's used or, what you think about it. So I'm a region rat. I'm not really like the rest of the state of Indiana, which is more or less the Texas of the Midwest. I like the phrase that Hoosiers are like Texans, but with smaller hats. So I mapped out where I've lived here in Northwest Indiana, Greg, and from my most recent place in Highland to Maryville to a town also called Portage, Crown Point, Hammond, and then Maryville in the house where I grew up. And interestingly, the route outline on like Google Maps looks like a crude drawing of the United States, which is like strangely poetic. But the whole trip, if you started where I live today and then just work backwards and stopped where I grew up, would be about 70 miles, and it would be about 2 hours of driving. So, this is the place that I know the most. I've learned to love it, even though there are things I really dislike. Just for example, recent reports that show that Indiana has the worst air quality in the country. Most of the towns and cities are not pedestrian friendly, so you have to drive everywhere, as the only consistent public transit is into Chicago, not around the region itself. So there are things that I don't like, but as I've gotten older, I've been able to far more successfully scratch the surface and find the things that I do like.
Nice. Very good. Well, I find it hilarious that you lived in a place called Portage, Indiana.
Yeah.
Like, that is just amazing.
Also poetic.
It is very much so. And so we have this next line. When I come to Portage, I like to be shown around. I like to go to 7-Eleven. I like. So I've been thinking about where I take people who visit me in Buffalo.
Right.
I have something that I call the Buffalo Tour of Death, which I will take you on when you come here someday. On the Buffalo Tour of Death, we visit Rick James's grave. We visit the grave of President Millard Fillmore.
Interesting.
Who was not a good president. And I also take people to visit the assassination site of President William McKinley.
Yeah, that's right.
So I've got a little Buffalo Tour of Death that I take people on. It's pretty groovy. Obviously, there's also Niagara Falls, but I haven't been over to the Canadian side since early March 2020. Buffalo has good pizza, so I like to give people a Buffalo pizza tour.
Cool.
Usually my Buffalo pizza tour involves sitting in my living room and ordering delivery from 4 different places.
Oh, yeah.
And having them staggered, right? So I time my first delivery to show up at 6. I time my second delivery to show up at 6:45, 7:30, 8:15, right? So you have a staggered pizza delivery from 4 different places. And so by the time the evening is over, my guests and I have sampled fare from 4 different restaurants over the course of several hours. And it is a good time, my friend. We also have the Tid the Season festival with Every Time I Die, who live here in town.
You talk about that a lot.
It's amazing. It's my favorite 2 days of music every year. It didn't happen this year, obviously, but hopefully next year. There's also good waterfalls, man, all over this state. Like, there's a waterfall that's really cool, like less than a mile from my house. There's also another one in Letchworth Park. So there's waterfalls all over the place, and I
You
really
sent
like.
me some pictures where like the water is crystal clear blue, just beautiful.
It's amazing, yeah. And like you're looking at my Zoom screensaver here, that's actually taken at Woodlawn Beach, just south of the city, right here on Lake Erie. And I know you guys have some decent beaches near you as well, where you like to go a lot and look for fossils. But I really like the beaches in Buffalo, man. Evangola Beach, Went Beach, Woodlawn Beach. These are
Hmm.
awesome places that I love spending time. So that's my Buffalo list. But if I was in St. Louis,
Yeah, yeah,
I haven't lived in St. Louis in a long time. So my memory is from a different time, right?
sure.
The places move on, right? They're like the place that Propaganda played in St. Louis is called Delmar Hall, and I haven't even been to Delmar Hall because it didn't exist when I lived there. Last time I saw Propaganda in St. Louis was a place called the Firebird, which doesn't even exist anymore. But I would go to Blueberry Hill. I would go to Vintage Vinyl. I would see a show at the pageant. Maybe I would go for a bike ride around Forest Park, see the Free Art Museum. People in St. Louis are like super obsessed with the zoo, but
Mm.
I'm not really stoked anymore on seeing animals in states of stressed out mania. So I skipped the zoo. But I'd also like to go to a blues game because that's what my dad and I would do my whole life. So Keith, if someone came to
Yeah.
your hometown and wanted to look around, where would you show them if you had them in your passenger seat?
Yeah, Greg, we actually have some overlap here with some similarities in interests and sorts of places. So the number one spot is the Indiana Dunes, which is the newest national park in the country.
Wow,
It's just
nice.
along Lake Michigan, and depending on which beach I go to, it could take anywhere from 25 minutes or so to get there to maybe about 35 to get to a more isolated beach. You mentioned fossil hunting. You can find ancient coral, fossilized crinoids, which are like sea lilies. There's a ton of really interesting different specimens that you can find in 5 minutes. If I walk to the beach and there's some pretty good, wash up on the shore, it'll take me less than 5 minutes after a couple years of experience and being able to pick out and find something. A couple other nature related trails, a place in Miller Woods in Gary where you can see the lupines bloom in May, and it's just small rolling dunes covered in purple flowers. There's bird watching here in the Highland Rookery, where the last couple years you can see different types of crane, blue herons, even owls have nested there. We might go to a Railcats game, which is the minor league baseball team here in Gary, Indiana. Or I also take people to a Grinders game, and the Grinders are an 1850s rules baseball team.
Oh, like a vintage baseball team.
Yeah, it's super
Nice.
fun, and it's free. You take a cooler, you pull up your own chairs, and it's really all about exhibitions. So it's very funny. The players are constantly like yelling at the umpire, who will fine people. Like
Yeah.
every time they do so, he fines them a nickel. So it's just a very fun, family-oriented event. And they always give information about how the game is played, but it's just a whole lot of fun. We might visit a brewery like Three Floyds, which people typically know.
Mhm.
Every year, they have this massive festival called Dark Lord Day, where you have to have a ticket, and something like 6,000 to 8,000 people will come. I've seen everyone from Amon Amarth, High on Fire, Pig Destroyer, I Hate God, Municipal Waste. A whole bunch of bands play, and it's just super, super, super fun. And it's getting there at 6 a.m. and leaving at 10 a.m. when the doors close, and it's a day of beer and metal, and that's super fun. We might go to Valparaiso or a smaller town, Griffith, that have just neat downtown areas, coffee shops, and restaurants. There's the statue of Flick from A Christmas Story, who gets his tongue stuck on the flagpole.
Oh yeah.
Because the author of that, Gene Shepard, grew up in Hammond, Indiana,
Sweet.
which is just north of me. So he's that's huge here. A Christmas Story is really popular. So people take their picture by the flagpole with like Flick stuck there with his tongue. We'll take probably a day trip into Chicago, just because there's kind of only so much you could do in Northwest Indiana. We might go to the Field Museum, Millennium Park, the Chicago Botanic Gardens, which is a recent discovery of mine just on the north side of the city. So kind of a combination of those things, and a lot of those being relatively new discoveries for me.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, what a great time. So then we go into this next line, right? So here's the next genius lyric. Porridge in the morning. I eat portage. I mean porridge in the morning. I eat porridge in Portage. Yeah, yeah. So this got me thinking about breakfast. My breakfast almost all the time is a whole pot of coffee with sweetened vanilla almond milk, and everything bagel topped with chive cream cheese, and a banana and strawberry fruit salad on the side. And I love it a whole lot. So, Keith, what is your breakfast of choice?
No, I got two. So there's my daily breakfast during the week, which is faster, which I call it's a Mystery Science Theater reference. I call the Thin Tuzler, because every time you see a restaurant in an early episode of Mystery Science Theater, let's say it's Joe's Cafe, they'll say like home of the Thin Tuzler, and it's this repeat joke that they keep saying, and I don't know the origin or what it even means. So I started calling my version of the Thin Tuzler. It's a piece of dark German wheat bread, crunchy peanut butter, slices of banana, chopped up walnuts, and then I pour a little bit of bourbon maple syrup and then sprinkle cinnamon and sea salt on that. And that's what I have during the week because it takes a minute to toast the bread.
Yeah.
The weekend, which is a longer process, is a tofu scramble from a vegan tofu scramble from the minimalist baker.
Nice.
Which is just a really like having, as I grew up, having the typical eggs and everything else, all the sides in the Midwest, like that's just super common. So I kind of stick with that, but having a tofu version and tater tots and some light life breakfast sausage.
Awesome. Nice. Okay, so let's bring this like a little bit further along here. We've got the next line. So I just want to say one thing, and that is, come on. Yeah. Come on, man. So John Sutton, he's like, I just want to say one thing. And he says, yeah, come on. Yeah, come on, man.
Right.
So Keith, if you could say just one thing, what would it be? If you were at a party and you were feeling good and you had a drink or two and you said, hey, everybody, listen up. I just want to say one thing. What would it be?
Well, two things come to mind, so I'm going to cheat. One is something that I've stolen from a friend of mine named Greg, who will do this thing where we just hang out and then we try to say the word cabbage in the weirdest way possible. So we'll like compete saying the word cabbage, which I know sounds absurd, but in the moment, maybe also with a beer or two, it's way funnier. So you have these grown people going cabbage, saying in some weird way. So I could see myself probably just yelling cabbage to a group of people who don't know me. But something else that comes to mind is I saw Bright Eyes in Chicago live. I'm going to say like 2003. And there was this guy in front of me who heckled the opening band Arab Strap the entire performance. And he kept pretending to be Bill Walton, like the basketball player / announcer.
Okay.
The entire set. And the whole time, this guy in front of me kept screaming, "Throw it down, big man." So because of that, that's become like a meme in my friend circle. Like we will always say, "Throw it down, big man" at a show, or Greg Ostertag is one of the finest players to ever grace the game, which is something this guy shouted out during this, indie rock band. So probably one of those two, just because no one would get it. And I would find it funny because it's an inside joke.
I love it. Well, mine would be Bill Brasky is a son of a bitch. Which is which is what my friends and I would watch every Saturday night in our apartment in college. We would watch the best of Will Ferrell on Saturday Night Live, and we would do the Goulet thing constantly. Goulet, oh look, a bighorn. And so that would be mine. So if I was at a party and I said, "Hey everybody, I just want to say one thing," it would be Goulet or Bill Brasky is a son of a bitch. And that's what I would say. So anyway, I love that. I love that you have the little example of the inside joke with your friends, because that's what I would do too. And that really makes me nostalgic and happy right now. Oh, Bill Brasky. What a good time. I even named one of my bicycles Bill Brasky.
No kidding.
Yeah, I had a cyclocross bike that I named Bill Brasky. It was a specialized cyclocross bike, and it was the biggest bike I have ever seen. And Bill Brasky, apparently in the Saturday Night Live skit, was like a giant.
Right.
So everybody was like, "Oh, look at this Bill Brasky bike." And it just became Bill Brasky the bike. Oh, anyway. So what do you think of the ending of this song with the looped, locked grooves, which repeats "Here We All Die," which is so creepy?
Yeah, it takes kind of an unusual turn to where just the words itself are dark and different from everything else, but even just the tone and the sound of everything shifts, and the fact that you can kind of hear it loop, you can hear it skip back. It adds just like this strange, ominous, eerie feel to it, and it kind of just makes me think back to Anchorless, and the idea of like, don't want to live and die here.
Oh yeah.
And describing a place that they're from.
Yeah. And in true Unscripted Moments podcast fashion, I found a study about how many people never leave their hometowns.
Oh, interesting.
So on Forbes, the study is I found that 11% of survey respondents in a survey population of around 2,000 found that 11% have never traveled outside the state where they were born.
Mm-hmm.
Over half surveyed, 54%, said they visited 10 states or fewer. Around 13% say they have never flown in an airplane, which, whatever. Better for the environment, honestly.
Yeah.
But 40% of those questions said they've never left the country. And over half of respondents have never owned a passport, which, interestingly, one of my starkest memories is when I started at my school that I taught at in England in like 10 years ago. There was a poster hanging on one of the math classroom, or maths, as they say in the UK, classrooms, that said the amount of Americans that don't have a passport. So it's almost like kind of like a joke about Americans around the world, about how poorly traveled we are. And for years, U.S. citizens did not need a passport to travel to Mexico, Canada, or on many cruises, which may clarify a couple of the discrepancies if people add up my math there. And you're like, wait a second, so-and-so can't actually happen because this amount of people did that. But for a long time, we didn't need passports to go certain places. But, I just found that was really interesting that the song ends with "Here We All Die" on eternal locked groove repeating. And then it got me thinking, like, yeah, it's true. But anyway, so if you look at the actual disc of the 5-inch in the box set, you'll also see that there are no center labels on this release, which kind of holds true from the Propaganda release, Where Quality is Job Number One, which also has no center labels and which also has locked grooves. But this one is so interesting because whoever did the etching on the middle of the 5-inch misspelled the word prairie. So it has Portage la Prairie etched into the vinyl or near the hole in the middle of the record. And prairie is spelled Prarie. So the Propaganda vinyl has a misspelling, and I looked at it with my first press box and my second press box, and they use the same they use the same mold for both pressings, so the spelling error is on all of the Propaganda vinyl, which I found to be really, really funny.
Right.
I Spy did a song called "When We Grow Up," and Todd sang it because he was in I Spy, obviously. But it's almost like a clean and melodically sung song, which he wouldn't really do for quite a while after joining Propaganda. So I was listening to it today and I was like, man, he sings a lot more like Bringer of Greater Things than he does March of the Crabs or Super Bowl Patriot, which I found interesting. And the song When We Grow Up also appears on the Perversity is Spreading. It's About Time compilation by I Spy, released by G7. But I think it's really hilarious that I Spy included like a totally legit song, and Propaganda included a song that nobody from the band even played on. And it was just a total joke, which I found to be totally spot on awesome.
Right.
So those are my comments on the lyrics for the song. You got anything else?
No. How about YouTube comments, Greg? What'd you find?
Yeah, there are a few on this one. So I found a little conversation between listeners. The first person said, "Wicked, mate. Glad you found this. The track was/is so off the wall. It really took me by surprise when I first played it. Was in a band myself at the time, and these guys were true idols. Didn't know it was Todd on the vocals and that he wasn't actually from Portage. That just makes it even weirder. I'm not jealous that you played with them, by the way." And then somebody replied to that, "Sorry to burst your bubble, but it's actually John Sutton from the Weaker Thans and Red Fisher singing on this one. I don't think anybody from Propaganda was involved in creating this fine piece of vinyl. John and another fellow recorded it as their final exam for the recording course they were taking. Well, that's the story Mr. Sutton told anyway. So apparently,
Interesting.
so there's more to this song than meets the eye for
Right.
the creation of it, which is why hopefully someday I'll ask John Sutton myself about this
Right.
song. And the last YouTube comment that I found was the infamous lost Propaganda song, LMFAO. So did you find any YouTube comments, or was that about the gist of it?
I think that more or less summed it up.
Nice, fabulous. Well, Keith, tell me what you take away from this song. What's your learning moment that you're walking away with?
So, Greg, I get the vibe that this song is kind of poking fun of Portage la Prairie, which everyone loves to rag on their hometown, but it's also kind of like family. You know, I joke about my family because I have a relationship in history with them, but I'm more likely to get defensive if an outsider would, make a comment or joke about them. So I mentioned before the lyrics to Anchorless, don't want to live and die here. And I spent a lot of my 20s arrogantly thinking I'm bigger than this place. Like I need to go somewhere else, as if the people living here who have raised families and contributed to their communities or pushed for social change, or who have, endured economic, social, and political struggle, as if those people aren't important or memorable because they're from a town people haven't heard, or they live in a place where they also happen to have gone to high school. So my 30s have been spent discovering the people and the places in the region that share my interests and values. And though I don't really want to stay here forever, and it's not because I'm from here, I just have, there are a few like non-negotiables that I have, and wherever I want to permanently set down some roots. And there's some things here that just kind of break that contract. So, Greg, like my grandma, who I'm super close with, she recently moved to Georgia, which has been pretty difficult. And after her living here in the region for her whole life, literally being 79, she left Northwest Indiana for somewhere else for the first time in her life. And it made me realize that there's just so much to say about where we live, how we're shaped by the places around us. Seeing my grandma really sad to leave her home, but also just as excited for something and somewhere new. I think if I did live here for the rest of my life, I'd continue to discover new things about, this place that seems familiar. And though I don't know where I'll be 5 years from now, I want to experience the places wherever I live or the places where I visit for what they are rather than what they aren't.
Yeah. It's like that that reminds me of that Lawrence Arms line of love what you are, not what you would like to be.
Yeah.
And so for me, this song has me thinking about where I'm from too. The town I grew up in, the places I used to go, the houses I used to hang out in, the schools I went to. And it's kind of painful. It's been kind of a painful day because I haven't seen so many of these places and people in so long. And I know that if I were to go to these places, it would cause me probably more pain than happiness, because it's all moved on without me. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it would just be weird, right?
Right.
I'm not a part of those places, even though I was formed in those places. And, that actually reminds me of another Lawrence Arms lyric. They have a song called Quincentuple Your Money. And Brendan sings, "There's a park in the city where I used to go, but now it's covered with fences and cops and light posts. And I'd never go back even if it was the same, but it kills me to know that it's changed."
Hmm.
And I can't even
Yeah.
imagine the level of change where I come from has undergone since I've been away. Heck, I went through a period of like 8 years between I was like 18 to like 26, and I didn't see my childhood home at all in like 8 years because we didn't live there anymore, right?
Right.
But then I did, and the tree in front of my childhood home was so much bigger than the day we moved out of that house that it didn't even look like the same house, like just a
Yeah.
tree. And it was pretty gut wrenching to see the trees that I used to like mow around, like when I was mowing the grass every summer. And then all of a sudden it's like a mature 35-year-old tree.
Yeah.
And then the driveway had been replaced and the shutters were a different color. And, it gets emotional just thinking about it. And like, I wonder how Jord and Chris feel about Portage la Prairie and if they find themselves asking these same types of questions. And, I'm on the cusp of a trip post-vaccine to the places I used to be often, but I haven't seen much at all in recent years. And I'm kind of dreading it, but I'm also kind of filled with glee. And so, I'm about to go back to some of these places on a little trip, and it feels pretty darn good. So, you want to finish this up? Should we go ahead and rate this guy?
Can we rate it? I don't know how to. I don't know how. Yeah.
All right, I'll start.
Okay.
I'm going to give this a 0.25 out of 5. This is not a propaganda song. I don't know,
Right.
man. It's like,
Yeah.
I love the episode and like the conversation, like your like fantastic company tonight. And I find it hilarious that I Spy put a real song on the 5-inch and propaganda didn't.
Yeah.
And like, I'll never forget the first time I ever heard this song, just going, "What is this?"
Yeah,
And so,
exactly.
good on propaganda for retaining a sense of humor since the very beginning, and good on Recess Records and Todd Congelliere for just rolling with this. And so, 0.25 out of 5.
Greg, I'm just gonna say ditto. I think
Okay.
you summed it up. That pretty much nails it. I like the humor. The conversation has been really fun after a pretty difficult week, and yeah, I don't know if this one needed very much parsing, but it was really fun to mull over some ideas.
Hey, and we said we were going to do every song when we started this
Right.
podcast, and this is a song. This is an official release by Propaganda. So yeah, we had to do it. And Todd Congelliere is just such a fantastic guest for this one. So thanks again to Todd. Definitely check out Recess Records. You can buy an I Spy 10-inch from recessrecords.com right now. But that's our episode on Portage la Prairie from the Play at Your Own Risk Volume 2 box set, double 7-inch and 5-inch. And if you want to email us, you can find us at propagandapod@gmail.com. If you want to find us on social media, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at propagandapod. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Yeah. So, I just want to say one thing, and that is, come on! Yeah! Come on!
Stonehenge.